This is it's really great to be here, and I'm excited to share my learnings and give a little walkthrough about type safety and React. I think it's a trending meme in the React land. Um, oh, this border was not supposed to be there. Anyway, hi, I'm Swix. I'm also known as Sean Wang, but I kind of try to go by Swix because that is a little bit more unique. I used to be in finance, but nowadays I'm more interested in developer productivity and developer communities. So most recently I was at Netlify, and now recently this year I just joined AWS. Developer communities wise, I can't make up my mind about frameworks. And so I help to moderate the React.js subreddit. If you want to learn React, definitely check that out. And as well as Svelte Society, when we're holding our first conference in October. If you're interested in Svelte at all, come check it out. But as another side gig that I have, I also help to, I guess, maintain the React and TypeScript community. It's like this union thing. And that's what we're going to kind of get into. And why do we want to do this? I kind of, the word that really echoes correctly with me is the idea of shifting left. And it's this research from IBM where they sort of surveyed, their own engineers, and they really have a lot of consultants, like hundreds and thousands of cases where they can really study these things. And for them, when they catch bugs, the further right it shifts towards like something that's already shipped, the more expensive it is, like 100 times more expensive than if it was caught at the design stage. So basically, I like this phrase of, you can save weeks and weeks of coding with just hours of planning. And I think that's a really true statement. But even more than that, you can automate a lot of that planning and checking with type systems. So the way I kind of pitch this is it's not just type systems. It's also about doing build automations. That's a lot of what we're doing these days, right? Like instead of running tests, we can also run commit hooks. So we only run checks on diffs, so it's even faster. And then we can run formatting on save. That's what prettier is a lot about. But then also while we read, we can our IDEs can actually help tell us if we've written code that is wrong, and all that just reduces the length of time it takes to discover code, and it should translate directly to dollars spent as well. So what does this look like? And we'll actually cover a lot more of that, but like that shift left idea also trickles down in terms of other features that are also nice. Those are the ones that we talked about, like fearless refactoring. Like I'll refactor the whole thing, and if anything was forgotten, like I don't have to run the code again. The IDE will just tell me, and that's a really good benefit, because anything that helps you refactor more helps you eliminate technical debt. It helps you also generate autocomplete, because that's another way of checking. It helps you inline documentation, so you don't have to remember what exactly each of these things mean. Like it actually, you can just hover over variables, and you can also test. But I do want to claim that types do not replace tests. I actually wrote a post on CSS Tricks on this, why types and tests serve overlapping but different purposes, and I encourage you to check that out. I'm quite tired of this discussion, and I think it's a solved issue. You should have both. Okay, so let's talk about Typesafe Frontends. So why is this so cool? Mainly because I help to maintain the React and TypeScript cheat sheets, and I've been doing this for over 2 years, and I've learned a lot about this topic. So I just wanted to share it with y'all. Types have, in the meantime, also taken over the React ecosystem. So everything from Next.js to React Native to React Router to Yarn to Storybook to Apollo to Gatsby, they've all not just supported types as an export, but also rewritten their core in TypeScript as well, meaning that they have made that trade-off versus the maintainability of their apps versus the increased learning curve that it might take for contributors. And it seems like people are willing to learn TypeScript to contribute. Like that seems to have gone from a negative to a plus now. Cool. For those who are new to React and TypeScript, this is essentially what it looks like to write React and TypeScript together. This looks like a normal React component, except that we have these like sort of decorations, and these are essentially type assertions. They're not really they're sort of like instructions to the TypeScript language server and compiler that says like this is of a certain type, and you're kind of telling it. But TypeScript also has a very strong inference engine. So for example, if I tell TypeScript that my component has these props, and the props has a message of type string, then when I do props.message and I hover over that, the VS Code in this case, but also just the TypeScript language server protocol in general, is going to know that props.message is of type string. So if I try to do some non-string method, like toFix or something, actually toFix might work, I'm not sure. But anyway, if I try to use this, or if I try to give it something that's not a string, it's going to throw a type error, and that's this seems like it's a nice to have until you start writing bigger and bigger apps, as well as in particular starting to deal with state in your React apps. So here we're annotating both props and state. I'm doing it in terms of the class component style. And you can see how this is the equivalent in terms of class components, and here's the equivalent in terms of hooks. So you can see how hooks are a lot more concise to type with TypeScript, and that's also it wasn't a motivation, but it was definitely a nice to have and a plus in favor of adopting hooks. I think again, the classes versus hooks discussion is something I'm not very interested in discussing anymore. But yeah, again, like if you try to treat this as a string, that would error because it's a number. So TypeScript knows that it's a number, and therefore the rest of your app is checked. So yeah, that's a super brief introduction. There's a lot more, and so for example, some of the nuances that you can come into comes, for example, when you're making custom hooks. So here I have a custom useLoading hook, right, which covers a useState hook, but then also has some custom behavior. So here I have it helps to wrap a promise, so it tracks the loading state, and then it returns an isLoading and a load array. Normally, if you just return isLoading and load like you would in JavaScript, that would actually infer a kind of a useless type that would be very hard to use. And so you have to learn these kinds of nuances. Like you have to learn that you have to tell TypeScript that you shouldn't try to infer the union type of these two things. You should actually try to just infer these as tuples, as types, like separate types based on the position in the array. That's the actual behavior that we want to try and do. So there's all these little tricks that you need in TypeScript to in order to do these things. Yeah, if you want to get started learning that, definitely check out my repo. It's completely free. There's a GitHub version, and then there's a hosted version with search. And I like using the search feature. And we definitely need contributors, so please dig through the issues and ask questions or answer them. Okay, so that's front ends. I think that's more of a solved problem. Then the harder problem is actually Typesafe Backends, which is something that we're not so clear about. And I think probably the winner in this space, especially for the JS ecosystem, is GraphQL. And GraphQL itself has a schema definition language. This is part of the spec of GraphQL, and you can see how they're used, in the GraphQL.org site. You can declare enums, you can declare types. Types can have IDs, strings, and as well as embed other types. You can have queries, and you can have mutations, and then you can sort of wrap them up in an overall schema. So that's essentially like the raw spec, and then there's extensions that we can do to that spec. But just based on that type. But just based on this type declarations, we can start to generate tooling. So this tool, Graphical, anyone who's used GraphQL knows this, but if you haven't, definitely check this out, because this is probably one of the most effective, inspirational, influential tools in DevTools. This actually lets you, it's like a REPL for your queries. So it actually runs against a GraphQL endpoint. You can do queries and see those sample responses, and then also check out inline documentation. So this is very, very similar to how TypeScript works for the front end, but just applies to the back end. So you can even annotate individual fields, like this is the title of the film, this is the episode of the film, blah, blah, blah. You can say like this field is deprecated, use this other field. And it really, really helps to communicate between back end and front end in a very tightly and well-checked manner. Like every single GraphQL request is validated before it runs. And then it's the guarantees are really cool. The savings in terms of data transfer is really cool. There's a lot of benefits to this design, and it's hotly debated, so I'm not going to cover that all. But I just want to make sure that the point is made that because you have Typesafe backends, then very good tooling can be generated based on that. And because it's an industry standard, we share the cost of developing things like GraphQL, and that makes it a lot easier to work with. Okay, then from backend to front end, we need to hook it up, right? So that's the tricky part. One of the cool projects that I like to see in this space is called GraphQL Code Generator. I think we can actually sort of X out and check this out. So I'm going to try and take a risk here. GraphQL Code Generator. There's a REPL here that I like to show off. If it works still. Is it still loading? Huh. Okay, it looks like my, okay. Okay, so yeah, you can go from a normal schema file. So I'm actually gonna try and reduce this a little bit. This is a little bit complicated. String email row, okay. So I'm just gonna try and reduce this to the bare minimum so we can try and study what this looks like. Here, like that. And we don't need a node. So we can go from this really short schema file that says, I have a query. I have a me, which is a user. I have a user, which you can query by ID. I can have all users, which is an array of users. And users are comprised of ID, username, email, and string, right? So I can go from that on the left all the way to on the right, which generates all this TypeScript that I can use inside of my front end. So when I use React and TypeScript together, I can just pull this types from the back end into the front end. So whenever those types change from the back end, I can flow them down to the front end. That's the dream, that's the vision, so that you're essentially you have tooling that's helping you check that you don't break between your back end and your front end. So yeah, that's the overall idea. I'm going to go back to my slides now. Maybe I should not have done that, but I don't know. So it's just really cool. At AWS, we've actually extended the GraphQL. So GraphQL is made to be extensible. And one of those ways, which is really this cool idea called directives. And directives are anything with an at on top of them. So you have standard SDL. So we're going to declare a type of post. But we're going to call this an at model. We're just going to throw it on there. And what that does is it actually spins up a database for you with the CRUD features: create, read, update, and delete. I'll follow those. So typically the hard part of implementing GraphQL backend is that you have to write a lot of boilerplate for spinning up resolvers. These are all generated for you just writing at model. So just 6 characters, and it saves you a lot of code, which are just pretty standard. This is not at all a unique insight. There are a lot of other ecosystem tools that let you do this as well. But this is AppSync, and that is dedicated to help you spin up AWS infrastructure. Cool. What other directives can we try? We can also try adding auth. So we can have a database, and then we can have auth, and we can add rules for who can access what. So like, is it private only? Is it read is public, but then private for editing and creating and deleting. All those rules can be modeled pretty succinctly just within a few directives. And that links into the authentication service of AWS called Cognito. You can also link to other services if you need to, but Cognito, of course, is first class. So yeah, you need persistence, you need authentication. What else? How about searchability? Right? You can spin up Elasticsearch just by adding an @searchable directive. So these are all like really interesting, and there are other directives that you can also check out with the GraphQL Transform library. We're not going to cover that exactly, but I just want to introduce to you this concept of, because you've done the schema, the SDL definition work, you can spin up a backend, and then you can flow the types to the front end, and that's a very powerful, like for the amount of work that you do just to do that, it's actually very powerful to try out. So that actually brings us to the demo that I've set up, and I think I have about 20 minutes ish to do a live demo. I've rehearsed this, but I'm still a bit nervous because it's live and it's also on my shitty internet. So kind of go easy on me. I've actually prepared this repo. It's on my GitHub. I'm going to give you a short link later on, but let's actually go ahead and see what it looks like over here. So I have it already cloned and running. It doesn't have any AWS infrastructure right now. but this is just to give you a sense of how it looks on my end. So it's a sample little CMS. Whoa, what happened? Okay, and I because I don't like looking at random lorem ipsum. I like to autofill from real news examples, and here I can actually add, and then I can edit as well. So like I can say hello React Summit. It's a very very simple app that lets you do that. Just to spell out the CRUD use case for a bit. Okay, so. The main idea that I want to kind of get across to you here is that you can take this front end that's kind of working, and then you can throw on a back end, and then build it out, and then have those types flow through, right? That's a really interesting thing to me. So the way that we're going to do it over here is we're going to call Amplify init, and that really kicks off the project. I'm just going to use default values for all of these because it just auto detects my setup, and based on for example here I'm using create React app, but if you're using Vue, if you're using Angular, it's going to do the right thing just by default because it can detect the project file. So that's going to set up the Amplify project. What I'm also going to do is I'm also going to start importing the configs. So before this session started, I already installed the library that I'm going to use, which is AWS Amplify. And what I'm going to do here is I also have I'm super lazy, so I have my own VS Code snippets. These are not the official ones. I just maintain my own because I have very different opinions, and I'm going to try and use them here. So I'm in source/index.tsx, which is like the entry point for all of these things. And if you notice that now that my provisioning has finished, I've auto-generated an AWS-imports file, which has just some public information about like what the endpoint and what region I'm connected to. So I'm going to import Amplify, and then it's going to auto-import. That's just a VS Code snippet. I'm gonna import that file and then run amplify.configure, and that's a very simple requirement to set up those resources. Okay, then the hard part. We're actually also gonna run. Let's see if I can do that here. I think this is this is in trouble. Gets us recompiling. I'm gonna kill that and restart. I'm gonna run amplify add API. So this is where we start to add. This is where we start to add the backend GraphQL stuff. That's what we're all here to see, right? So we're gonna choose GraphQL. I'm gonna choose defaults for all of these, and here's where we want to kind of edit the changes that we want. I actually have a I actually forgot that I need to change the. So it's going to open up that schema GraphQL, and it's going to give us a simple to-do model by default. But honestly, we actually need something a little bit different. I think one way to do this, honestly, is to do this here. Let me show you. So I have this modeled, inside of my app. I have this modeled in my front end, and so in my front end, I've already declared this, right? A type of blog. So I'm just actually going to go ahead and translate that. So I have title, image, body. And then the rest are all, these three fields are auto-generated, so I don't need those. So I'm actually going to say title, image, body, and I'll just say they're all required. So let's see, string, and then string. I think that's it. Cool. So I have my backend. If I wanted to add auth, I can just say add auth, and I have snippets for those, or searchable, or predictions, or whatever. You get the picture. But here I can actually start pushing. I have a lot of shortcuts, so this is amplify push. So I'll just type it out because this is a public talk. So in order to set up the backend and provision every single piece of infrastructure that we saw, it actually takes time to do that. So that's why I try to kick this off in order to get that process going. But in the meantime, I'm actually going to go back to my slides because I know this takes some time. That's why I prepared some stuff. And even if it fails, I have a backup, so don't worry. But I just want to give you an overall of what we just experienced, which is a little bit of the AWS Amplify developer experience. And the idea is that it's this combination of CLI libraries and UI libraries. And then as a console hosting service that we need. So these parts are open source, and these parts are closed source managed services that you pay for. And I really like that a lot of these are open source, and sometimes you don't even have to touch AWS at all to do that. There's also this interesting section of categories, and we're gonna talk about that in a little bit. But you saw me use the Amplify CLI commands, which is Amplify init, Amplify add API, and then there's also local testing. So you run a local server mock. You can push the backend as well as update and configure those changes, and it does code generation as well for Android, iOS, Flutter. We just added. TypeScript Flow and GraphQL, which is a lot of, like, it's probably one of the biggest CLIs I've ever seen, which is pretty cool. There's also the concept of categories. So we don't say, amplify add DynamoDB, we say Amplify add API, because and it's this idea that you think in terms of categories, and then Amplify helps you translate between that and the eventual end service. So like when I say auth, I want to add auth. I don't actually want to add cognito. Like cognito is like a means to an end to get there. And so it actually offers a lot of other solutions, including PubSub and XR for augmented and virtual reality content. I have never touched that because I am more interested in CRUD stuff. Analytics is also really cool. It's something that I see people use a lot, especially for tracking, user activity and understanding what they want and what they don't want. You can actually see the growth of this in open source. So these are all the npm downloads for the individual packages, and they're fairly linked. I don't know. I like seeing things go up and to the right. So that's pretty cool. Then we also come to the JS libraries. So there's libraries and then there's UI. So the libraries are sort of framework agnostic stuff that we can use to interact with our backends that we have set up, right? So we have here the REST API method. So if I want to interact with /orders, that's what I do. But later on, we're going to see API.GraphQL. And then here we have components where it's like pre-built components that interact with our preset off settings, for example. So if I just want to throw up a login screen, I can just import from AWS Amplify React. And these are all just pre-made. Obviously, you might want to customize them. So a lot of times I would just build this without any of the pre-made React components. But these are just there because it's faster to get going. Okay, so let's jump back to the demo. I hopefully think this has not been finished. I'm always a little bit worried about live demos because sometimes when I practice, I'm not streaming, and then sometimes when I am streaming, stuff like this happens. Okay, I'm gonna trust that ooh, you see that? Wow, my timing is so good. Okay, so what it just did is it auto-generates, it's near completion, so it's auto-generating those GraphQL resources as well, and it's generated that GraphQL endpoint. So actually, let's actually take a look. So I'm feeling very good about this. So I'm gonna try and show off a little bit. So I'm going to run Amplify console API and take you to that point where we actually saw the GraphQL tooling, right? So you can actually see that this sends you directly to the specific point in the AWS console. So remember that we just set up the schema over here. Here. Okay, we just set up that schema where it's like blog, image, title, body. Sorry, blog, image, title, body. Yeah, whatever. So here we have a simple query. Like this is graphical, but kind of skinned for AWS. So obviously when we run list blog and we try and get items, we try and get all the items, this is going to turn out empty because we haven't done anything. But we can actually head to mutation, and it should give me that create blog mutation. And I can just say hello world. World. I don't need an ID. I can see an image. Let's go to Unsplash and get a random image. Let's say like that. Very nice. And then our title will be Hi World. Oh man, my computer is dying. Okay, so I just need to create. I don't need anything to come back, but let me just run this mutation. Okay, so now when I run the queries again, it's going to actually start showing up, and I can just say hello world 2, hello world 2. I'll just populate it a little bit with a little bit more stuff in there. What's amazing is that this is just a GraphQL gateway. Where it's actually storing all that data is actually inside of your data sources, right? So here we actually can open up directly to DynamoDB. The whole point is that all of this is sort of open source tooling that falls back directly to the raw resources, so you only get charged for those. And you can see this is exactly what I typed, and it's like if you have any sort of DynamoDB expertise, or if you ever want to eject from Amplify and go on your own, you have all of these in sort of industry standard tooling, and that's an interesting difference that I think AWS has over other solutions that may be out there that I've tried. So that's a super interesting ideal. So now I'm actually I'm satisfied that we've set up our backend correctly. Now I'm actually going to go ahead and try and import that inside of our app. So one thing here that is a bit tricky is that we've generated JS by default. I actually don't need JS. I need TypeScript. So I'm going to go ahead and configure CodeGen. I think it's CodeGen configure. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to switch over to the TypeScript type tooling just so that we have some sensibility in our types. Okay, so I'm almost done. Don't worry for those who are kind of freaking out over time. Because I can also import Amplify from here. And here I have my snippets helping me out. So I need to import the API category where I can either run REST or GraphQL. Here today I'm actually going to use GraphQL, so I'm just going to use this. I also included links to my docs so that if I need to look it up, I can look it up. But of course I've memorized it. So now we've also you can see that we've sort of auto-generated all these queries over here, and we can use them inside of our front-end code. And these are all auto-generated from the back-end, which is pretty cool. Okay, so let's actually do this. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit, and I'm going to throw this in here. So let's throw this in here. So when our app renders, we're actually going to go and fetch our blogs from the API. So it's api.graphql, and we run the list blogs query. So notice over here, I haven't imported this list blogs query, but I can just say list blogs. And because I've used TypeScript, I can import this. It automatically, the IDE is smart enough to automatically import, and it knows that it knows to get it from here, this list blogs GraphQL query. So because of that tight integration, I can actually do this, and it helps to smooth out my workflow really well. And so the effect of this is that it just updates whenever I run. So I think if I save this down, it's going to go ahead and re-render and hopefully not die on me. It looks like there was an issue there that I saw. ToDate string is not a function. Huh. ToDate string is not a function. Okay. Let's just show it. Crap. So that was basically TypeScript looking out for me, because otherwise I would have a runtime error. Yeah, so see, these are the, what is that? Comma expected. I'm not sure what that is. I think that's an error. I think I need to restart this code. But you can see that it started loading from my backend to the front end. And then I think the last parts I wanted to add, I'm like so close to done, is for adding posts. Let me add this as well. So it's like api.graphql. Let's do create blog. Yep. Okay. And that auto imports. Oop, that auto import did not work for TypeScript. Sometimes it breaks randomly. I don't know why. This is more of a VS Code issue than a AWS issue, but it's still kind of sad. But anyway, and then I need to pass in some variables. So here, I think the only variables that I need are just the new values that I'm creating. And then the same thing goes for updating blogs. So let me switch to the update. Here, I need to actually pick out the created at and the updated at, and then do res input and new values. So I cannot pass in some random stuff here. So I need to manage those new values as well. Okay, so hopefully all this works. And I think it's still reloading. Okay. Yeah, pardon this like random sizing thing. Okay, so let's actually try this. So let's add this. Let's add, and then let's update this to locally updated. Let's actually give a new picture because I like new pictures. Unsplash random. Almost done. Almost 30. Exactly 30 minutes that I'm gonna be done with this. So I'm gonna try and change the picture. I don't know if that change actually went through. I see. It seems like I had some error, so I need to handle that better. What is this error? I don't know. Anyway, let me just try and reload. Let's try to change this picture. Oh, it doesn't like changing that picture. I'm not sure what it is. But anyway, I added those two new items over there. You can see over in my my database. If I refresh, you'll see the new items that have popped up there. So that's essentially the main idea of the full stack, Typesafe full stack React that you're doing all these together. And there's a lot of these other sort of directives that you can explore, and I think they're very cool for spinning up infrastructure that connects from your platform down to your GraphQL and down to TypeScript for your front end, and that's really cool. The person who really tipped me off to this was Lauren Tan from Netflix, now working at Facebook, but she has this idea of the strongly typed graph, and I encourage you to check out her blog post where she talks about this dream of end-to-end type coverage, where it helps teams to work with each other. So I think that's a really really brief intro to Amplify, really brief intro to this idea of full stack TypeSafe, and thank you for your time. Check out these links if you need them.
Thanks for that. That was awesome. And we're gonna be waiting for you for the Q&A session in a couple hours. So we'll see you there.